And we are recording. Keith, over to
You're
you, mate.
over to me. Have we got enough? Okay, got 6 people, so let's go. Okay. Um, Estimation. I guess we've all everybody's using a lot of projects are using Scrum. So one of the bits about Scrum is Scrum teams have to plan. So that's why I was going to talk about estimation today. So let's have a look. But oops, why isn't that working? Estimation. Why we do it? Talk a bit about absolute and relative estimation, how relative estimation can help us plan, stuff we think about, and then all the bits that you'll see, you'll be going, what the hell's that got to do with us doing software delivery? So then I'll try and type the software delivery. And if we get to the end and we've got some time, then we'll talk about story points, which if you've been working in Scrum or Agile, you've probably heard lots of. So let's go and shout out if you've got any questions as we go. Just shout out. So why do we estimate? Why do we estimate anything? We do it when we want to plan something. Really, whenever we do any kind of planning, we've got to estimate. Whether it's a dinner party, we've got to do some estimation. How much food do we want, or how much booze do we want? Or in my case, when I was going down to the south of France with some friends, we did some planning for that. So we did some estimations. We looked at routes, where we're going to go. And from the estimation point, when you're thinking about all this, it makes you consider what you know, i.e. there's going to be 3 of us going and we're going to leave on this day and we're going to come back on that day. But it also makes you consider all the other stuff, like what we don't know. So when we're out there, I don't know whether this road's going to be closed, maybe it suddenly starts snowing or whatever. You're kind of thinking about all this stuff that you've got to that could impact your plan, and you're having it as a discussion. We were having it as a discussion between the 3 of us. So you end up with, okay, we've got a shared understanding of kind of what we're going to be doing. We kind of got a rough idea what we're going to be, what we know we can do. We know there's going to be a few unknowns, and so everybody is in sync on that, and you don't get someone halfway through going, well, I didn't think this is what we were going to do. I thought we were going to go to Yugoslavia or somewhere. So it's just stuff that you think about. So why do we estimate? We do it when we're going to plan anything. Now, a little bit about comparing stuff, because when we're doing estimation, we kind of, in this, when we do relative estimation, we're going to start comparing stuff. So if I put this up, the price of a bottle of Coke, if we went to the supermarket, local Sainsbury's, Tesco's, or if you're posh, Waitrose, it's going to be about, I don't know, £1.50ish for a bottle of Coke. And everybody says, yeah, you go in the supermarket. Yeah, it's always about the same. You go to a music festival, you go to the Grand Prix, or you go to an event up in London, and suddenly you're paying £3-4 for a bottle of Coke. You get that feeling that you can compare. You can say, yep, it's this is a bit more than I would normally be spending. The norm is about 150, but I can understand why I'm paying £3. But you get that gut feel, and that's what it's about. You compare stuff. We're doing this all day long, whether it's buying a bag of chips at the supermarket, at the fish and chip shop versus at a festival. You're kind of getting this idea. We're comparing things, and that's where relative estimation comes in. And we get a gut feel when we're about right. So if I bought something at a Sainsbury's and it was 150, yeah, it's about right for this bottle of Coke. Or it's £3 at a music, yeah, it's about right whenever I go to a music festival. And I'm just kind of sharing that a lot of this stuff we do in our daily life, and it's not something new that we're going to do when we come and start talking about software development or application development. So relative versus absolute. And I probably am whizzing through this, Andy, because in the past I did this as a 1 hour and we got about half an hour. So if I asked everybody how many pages are in the top book, and I don't know how many people on this call at the moment, but if there's 10 people, I'll probably get 10 different answers. They might be about roughly the same, but I'll probably get 10 different answers. But if I said how many pages in the second book compared to the top book, I reckon most of you would go, well, it's about double. And you'd probably see that quite quickly. So we could have an argument about how many pages are in the book. I mean, we could go and look it up. or we can just very quickly go relatively, yeah, it's about double, no worries. How long to read the first book? And I know I read quite slowly, people read quickly. I'm never going to agree with someone who reads fast how long it's going to take to read that first book. It's going to take me a week. No, it's only an hour. It's a week, it's an hour. But how long to read the second book versus the first book, yeah, it's going to take me about twice as long. You agree straight away because you're thinking in relative to, in my head, I'm thinking it's going to be 4 days rather than 2. And in Andy's head, he's thinking 2 hours rather than 1. But it's still just twice as long. It's very easy for people to agree on relative sizes of things. That's what I say. So we do it all naturally anyway. So how can that help us? How can it help us? Well, this is Chicago, probably guess that, Chicago Sears Tower. And I imagine that we could probably all quickly agree that the Sears Tower, which is the big black one with the white spikes on it, is about twice the size, twice the height of the red one, big red. We could probably all agree that quite quickly. But if I asked you what's the actual height of the Sears Tower, we'd probably get loads of different answers. And in fact, it's just over 442 meters. So it's fairly straightforward for us to compare stuff rather than do absolutes. So I've put a couple of lines on there, and you're probably immediately thinking, oh yeah, those other buildings are about the same as the red one. It's natural thought because we've put some lines on it, and that's what it's all about. So if we wanted to compare how long it's going to take to walk up the stairs in those buildings to get to the top, the Sears Tower is probably about twice as long, maybe a bit more if we get worn out, but about twice as much as it's going to take to go up the red one. And in actual fact, the fastest climbing of the Sears Tower, which is 2,232 steps, was 20 minutes. Bloody good going, if you think, if you ask me. But yeah, we're comparing stuff again. We're not talking absolutes. So I put some more lines on there, and we've got some other buildings that are roughly those similar kind of heights. So whether we're climbing it, whether we're washing the windows, we can now kind of look and say, yeah, all those buildings will be about the same. Again, we're kind of doing it naturally. I've put some lines on to help, but we're kind of looking at, yeah, those are about the same. So we end up with, I'm just putting buckets. It's not about cleaning the windows, but we just end up with buckets of stuff. So we've got a small bucket at the bottom, and then a bit bigger bucket, and then a bigger bucket, and then a great big bucket. And we can put things in those, use those when we're doing this comparison. It's not exact. We don't have to have a bucket for every single building. It's roughly which ones are about the same. So we've talked about relative estimation. We've talked about gut feel. How does this help us with our planning? So let's talk about that now. So I'm moving house. Well, hopefully moving house soon. And so I've got going to do some decorating. So painting or decorating a house. And you think, I've got to do the whole lot, or in this case, the ground floor. When am I going to be done? How can relative estimation help us here? So I just picked one of the rooms. I didn't pick the small, I kind of picked a medium-sized room, which is the bedroom, and I stuck a 5 on there. Give it a size. I could have called that a medium. I've just put a number on it. Now I can estimate the size of the others relative to that. So that's what I've done here. I've called this, I've got a 5, this is about the same, these are a bit smaller, this is a lot smaller, these are bigger. And I've got those rough buckets now of room sizes. So I can, because I've used numbers, and equally that could be an extra small, a medium, an extra small, a medium, 2 smalls, some large. You can add those up. In my case, I've used numbers, and I've got 33 units, 33 things, widgets, teddy bears, whatever you want to call them. It's just 33 things. So I've relatively sized, but how do I come up with the plan? So if I've relatively sized all this, how do I actually know how long it's going to take me to do any of this? I don't, unless I've been if I'm a painter and decorator, I could use some history. But if I'm doing this for the first time, what can I do? I've got to do something. Find how long. So I do some work. I decorate the smallest rooms. I decorate the bathroom, and it takes me 2 days. And that gives me an idea now. I think, well, if that took me 2 days, and that was the little one, then I can say, well, to do a 5 is going to probably take me about 10 days, and a 3 is going to take me about 6 days, etc. So you just add them all up, and so I add up my 33, 2 days for one, 66 days. So now I've used the relative estimation to get an idea of the different, how much effort it is to decorate each room. And I've done some work to find out how fast or what my work rate is, my decorating rate is. And of course, I've only done one room, and I'm still using a paintbrush, and I'm still thinking there's got to be a better way to do this. Will I continue at the same pace? No, I won't. I'm going to learn stuff as I go. This is the empiricism. I'm going to do stuff, and I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to change what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go, hang on, what's this little paintbrush? I can use it. Hang on a minute, I can go and get a roller. I get a roller. Now I'm armed and dangerous, and I can be a bit quicker with decorating all these rooms. But the sizes of the rooms are still the same. The effort to do it, it's still the same amount of paint on the walls. It's just my way of working. I've improved my way of working. So will I do it in the planned 66 days? No, I'm probably going to do it in probably less than 60 days, or much less than that, because I'm learning stuff as I go. And that's the so there's difference there between the amount of effort and my actual work rate. Does this, if I can see a few people's faces, these nodding heads. Are we still with me? Is everyone still okay? I can see some nodding heads. So here's the killer for you. It's actually a doll's house. It's not a big house. It's a doll's house. What difference does it make? It makes bugger all difference, really, because the relative sizes of those rooms are all exactly the same. What's different is the plan changes. So instead of it taking me 2 days to paint my bathroom in my house, it now takes me 20 minutes or 10 minutes to paint the little bathroom in the doll's house. But the relative size of those rooms is still the same. So it's still I can still use those relative sizes, and I can take that 10 minutes for the small room and now take that up to the 66 unit, to the 33 units. The relative sizing is just the rate that I work at that's different. And the whole
point me wonder why you've got a pink dollhouse though, Keith.
That actually is not mine. I did actually get a picture off Amazon, Andy. And I put the little mark underneath just to prove that I got the picture off of it. And it's not a photograph from my spare room.
Feel better about that.
Feel better. Good. So basically what we're doing using the relative size is we're decoupling the scope of what I've got to do from the time. And we do some work, and then we can derive how long it's going to take me to complete something from the relative estimation, doing some work and combining them together. So car wash, that's what I put on there. That's another one, an example. Car wash. I don't know whether they're still around at the moment, but I used to go to the home base near me, and there was one of these hand car washes there. And the guy you'd drive up and you'd be in the queue, and the guy you'd go up, walk around, you'd say, oh, how long is it going to be, mate, before I get my car washed? And he'd look down the queue, and he'd see a couple of these little Fiat little tiddly cars, and he'd see some middle-sized cars and some big cars, and he'd have a rough idea how long it's going to take to do a little car, and he'd just work his way up the queue. Yeah, small, medium, large, work that out. Oh, it's going to be about an hour and a half, mate, before we get to you. It's a similar thing. It's just using the relative sizes of those cars in the queue, knowing roughly what it's going to take to do one of those cars, so he can give you a plan for when you're going to get your car washed. Similar kind of thing. It just happens in day-to-day life. So what else do we think about when we're estimating? So we've talked about when we were painting, the amount of paint that's going to go on the wall, the effort to do that, the amount of work that we're going to do, So in this case, with this renovating this old house, it's kind of painting it, it's resorting out all the woodwork, ripping stuff down, fixing. What do we know? All the stuff we can see on the surface, like that roof's going to need doing. What don't we know? Oh, God knows what the foundations are like. And when we start pulling a panel off the wall, what's the pipe work going to be like, or the electrics and things? All these things that we're not sure about. Dependency, complexity. Well, when we start doing this, are we going to need help doing that pipe work or the electrics? Dependencies, when am I going to need stuff ordered? All this kind of thing. Am I going to need a plasterer to come in? Am I going to need an electrician to come in and do some work for me? Are there going to be specific tradesmen? And these are the discussions. It's also, estimation isn't just about coming up with some numbers. It's about having those discussions. In fact, when you're working in teams, the numbers are really just a byproduct of having a discussion on what you're going to be doing. A bit like the bike holiday, we could compare riding down through the Alps to going to Brittany, and we have all the discussions about it, and then we go, oh yeah, that's about twice as that one. It's just a byproduct at the end. But in a lot of situations, there's so much, a lot of focus gets put, what's the number? What's the number? We need to add these numbers up, and they're rough numbers. The important bit is that people have a shared understanding. So when stuff does happen and when stuff does come up, everybody can understands why and can come up with how we can fix it. Doing that estimation also, do we actually want to do it? We can do all of this. No, we don't want to renovate that house. It's going to cost us way too much and it's not going to be worth it. How do we know when we're actually done as well? And I'm not going to go into that now, but there's a term definition of done in Scrum. And that's really when we're talking about user stories, another term from Scrum, or actually that's not in Scrum, you can use user stories. But when am I actually done? So when will this house be done? Is it when absolutely everything has been completed on it, the roof, the woodwork, the painting? And then you could ask your question, well, when's actually enough? Is anything ever really done? Is the house ever really fully completed, or is there always something that you want to do on it? And then you've got things like other bits to consider as you're going. And I've put on there legislations. So these are the things like, or in software, non-functional requirements, security, performance, all this kind of stuff that you've got to factor in. But you do it from the beginning. There's no point doing all that lovely house reservation, putting all the electrics in, then getting someone to come and check it and no, that's not right. You do it as you go. Whoops, I'm hitting the button and it's not moving down the screen. So how does all this doll's house and Coca-Cola and all the rest of it refer to software delivery? Well, I've got on here books and rooms and buildings is the kind of stuff that we're doing. And we've components, widgets, screens, APIs, tables. This is the stuff we're building. We talked about people that can climb quickly, that can read fast, slow readers, people that decorate quickly, slowly. And this is the different experience levels inside the Scrum team. You might have someone that's highly experienced in Sitecore versus a novice person that's just turned up in Sitecore. You could have an experienced tester versus an inexperienced. People do things at different rates, and that's when it comes back to using that relative estimation. If you ask how long is it going to take to test this, and you've got an experienced and an inexperienced tester, they're never going to agree. But if you're looking at 3 stories in a sprint, you can easily go, well, that's going to be about twice as much, and that's going to be about 3 times as much. So it saves a lot of, well, in my case, in the past, a few arguments around, it's 2 days. No, it isn't, it's an hour, it's 2 days. And you can go around that loop many times. And then as I say, some of the legislations, the gas, the sign off, we talk about performance, or on L&Q recently, we've been looking at accessibility. So these all kind of relate across. And similar kind of thing, the volume of work. How much code is there to write? What do we know? What don't we know? The writing is in order to write this code, have we got to come up, what algorithms have we got to come up with? Dependencies. Oh yeah, well, before we can do that, we need this. And then the last bit is, can we actually afford to do this? Should we even do it? but the main thing again is all around this shared understanding. It's having these discussions, and that's the important bit. In my eyes, the Scrum framework, Agile, it's a great framework. It talks about communication, but not enough. Not to me, it doesn't emphasize it enough. It is about talking. Anything in life, you got misunderstandings, talk, communicate. So these are the kind of things. That's to me why the books and the Doll's House and Chicago relate through to software delivery. So Andy, how are we on time? Well, we got a few minutes left, haven't we? I can bore people with. I'll bore people with some numbers. So we talked about relative estimation, and on that house earlier, I put some numbers on there. And it's not quite the Fibonacci sequence. People know the Fibonacci sequence: 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. Next one would be 21. Next one would be 34. 34. But in this case, we're doing a modified sequence, and it's just to show that this is an estimation. Nobody will say, how much is it? Oh, it's £99.99. It's about £100. It's about 40. No one says £39.75. It's about 40 quid. That's why they kind of use the modified for this estimation. And the other thing is when you actually look at the percentage differences between all of these as they grow, yeah, at the start, they're kind of all over the place, 100%. So half to 1 to 2, but then you get 2 to 3, 3 to 5, and it starts to come, and it ends up around kind of about 62%. So as you get these bigger numbers, it's still the same relative size difference, even though the numbers look massive. It's still that similar kind of amount bigger each time. I think I've covered most of this. It's unitless. As I said, it could be teddy bears, it could be chocolate buttons, doesn't matter. People worry about it all the time, but the main thing is decoupling the scope from the time. Most people, how long is this going to take? And it's the first question. How long is it going to take you to do this? It's one item, one thing. But with Scrum, you're trying to do this as a series of things, as multiple things. So do it relatively, do some work, and then work out the duration. Everything is we kind of think of things just in an absolute time to do one thing, and it's hard, and it's hard, and you can't, and it's difficult to compare across different groups if you're doing absolutes. But if you're doing relative, most of the time people will say, yes, this is about twice as big as that, or this is. And it's a lot easier to take those relatives across groups. So if 3 different teams sized some stories on a backlog, relative sizing, and you gave them a single baseline, like here's the first story and we're going to call this, they'll all probably get it roughly about the same. But you ask them the time to do it and it will be completely different. So it is all about this decoupling. I think that was about it, other than just remember estimation is just like anything else. It's a tool. And I think as I've been going through this, one of the values is individuals and interactions. So discussions, communication over processes and tools. So yeah, let's use estimation. But as I said, it's usually a byproduct of having a discussion about stuff, understanding what we're going to do, whether it's going on holiday or delivering a new site core component or site. It's those discussions that count, and then all of this is to help us do some planning.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Your example you used of the small bedroom, where does that slot within in a delivery or of a project? Would that be like a sprint 0? Or is that something you need to do first in order to estimate anything else? Because how would you know what the rest are if you haven't done that bit of work first?
Most projects you'd end up, well, on the Scrum, you'd end up with a backlog of work to do. It's typical that they would be broken down into user stories. So where that one is, would be the smallest user story that people think that a team thinks they can deliver. So if I was starting from scratch, Attila, and I got the first project and it had a backlog, I would probably look for scan down the list with the team and look for something about round the middle. I wouldn't start with the smallest, because there might be something smaller coming down the line. So when you do this for the very first time, that's why I picked the room. I picked kind of a middle-ish room. I didn't say I'm going to pick the basket that's smallest and work my way up. I picked something around the middle, and then you've got scope either direction.
So what happens when you so say you pick the middle one and you still don't know how long it'll take, you actually just go and do it?
Yes.
How can you time box? You can't really time box it to, it's got to be within a 2-week sprint, because you don't know how long it's going to take. You're
absolutely right. What I would do if you've got stories is you then break them down. Okay. So if you know what the first value item, this is the first story that we're going to, you could either say, this is what we think is the smallest, so we can have a go at that one first to try and get a baseline for how we work. Or someone might say, well, that's not actually the highest value item. So you pick one, doesn't necessarily matter which one. The smaller you pick, the sooner you're going to get feedback. And it's all about getting early feedback. So you'd pick one of those stories and do some work. If you were a team that, if you're a paint and decorating company, and you knew what your rate of work was, so you would estimate those, and you know that we can do a one in half a day, then you've got that history. Yeah. So if that's why we try to encourage stable teams so that they've got that history. If you haven't got a history, you've got to do some work before you can actually find out what a small story actually takes, or a medium-sized story. And you're always in that forming phase of a team. You need to do some work, and then the first time you learn some stuff, and it's only after maybe I don't know, 5-6 sprints that you now start to kind of level out. That's when you think, yeah, we're doing stuff, we're fairly confident now, we've learned some stuff. But if you're always in that, well, we've done our 5 sprint, great, now we're going to move on to another project. If it's the same team, great, they've got the history. If you bring another group of people together, now you're starting from scratch again. So you basically do some work. And in the sprint planning, that's where if the first story comes in, can I do this in this sprint? I would break the story down into all the tasks that's needed to be done. And you go around the room and say, so can we achieve this in our 2-week sprint, and be confident we can deliver it? And if the answer is yes, then good. If the answer is no, then you're going to have to go back and break it down into some smaller bits.
Okay, that makes sense.
Does that help?
Oh yeah, definitely. That's why I was always curious about how that always happened, because it's the beginning bit that on a new project, a new team, new technology, that kind of thing. You never know. You've
basically got to do stuff.
Yeah.
And you're probably going to do stuff for at least 1, 2, 3, 4 sprints for people to start working together and to discover stuff. I mean, you're always going to find things out as you go through, but I think it's fair. I think if I did a search out there, I'm probably fair in saying it takes about 5 or 6 sprints to get to the point where you've got a more consistent.
Good.
There you go, Andy. Any other? I can't see any who's on the call and who isn't. So has anyone got any other questions? Or
if there are, speak now or forever hold your peace.
I mean, did it make sense?
It did make sense,
people.
Even to me, and I've got no idea what's going on.
So I try and do these relating to kind of what happens out in life rather than just writing code and testing it.
Yeah, no, that was fantastic, mate. Fantastic. Thank you very, very much indeed for sharing it. And
no worries.
I didn't have a clue, which I definitely didn't have before.
And if we have, I mean, if you think of questions afterwards, anyone, just shout. And I think Attila, I've said on our meetings, I'm happy to come and join any sprint planning or estimator meetings on any of the projects. More than happy to come along and sit in and see what happens.
No, that's good. So, cheers.
Great stuff. Cool. Thanks, man.
Thanks, Keith.
No worries, guys. Have a good afternoon, then, everybody.
And yourself. Cheers, buddy.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.